Okay, good evening. A warm welcome to you all. Hope you're all doing well. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Welcome to week 2 of our MENA Summer Sessions. As you can see, I made a new tile for the second week. Hope you guys are excited to continue learning about productive skills, differentiation, motivation, and engagement. That's what we're going to be talking about this week. As you can see, we've got some wonderful speakers joining us. I hope this is streaming to Facebook. If it is, please do say hi on the Facebook page as well. It is. Okay, great. I will keep an eye on that chat as well, just in case anybody wants to say hi there. Sahida, for example, good evening to you. So if this is your first time joining us, if you weren't able to join us last week, a warm welcome. Let me turn this down because I can hear myself. This is the MENA Summer Sessions, a 2-week extravaganza of webinars brought to you by the Macmillan Education MENA team. It's been brought to you by the MENA PD Academy, which is the professional development community and platform that we run. You can scan that QR code and you can see our website where we host all of our activities. Move this out the way. And you can see lots and lots of things on there as well. Tell you a little bit about our professional development platform. If this is the first one, good evening, Hala. Very nice to see you. If this is the first one you're joining us for, let's bring in this guy to tell you all about the MENA PD Academy. If you give me 2 minutes before we start the webinar. So this is our professional development community. It's a way of connecting teachers across the Middle East and North Africa, which is MENA. So we cover everything from Morocco, right across to the Gulf, all of North Africa, the Levant, even up to Iraq. And we're here to help you advance learning in your classrooms. And we do that through helping you advance your teaching skills, focusing on the things that you guys would like to focus on. You can visit us on any of the social media platforms, or you can go to the website and you can subscribe and you can find out all of the different things that we have going on here at Macmillan Education. These summer sessions, these webinars have been designed around the insights that we found when we wrote our report a couple of weeks ago. And this was based on the surveys that we done last year with hundreds of teachers across the Middle East and North Africa, and the kinds of things that you guys told us that you wanted support and for us to focus on, namely motivation and engagement of students in the post-COVID classroom. So obviously a lot of things have changed. Productive skills, getting students to be able to speak confidently, improving their writing, bringing up those skills, helping them feel confident to prove and show evidence of their language development. And the last one was differentiation and inclusion, making sure that all of our students can succeed in their learning and in the classroom, and everybody's engaged and everybody is performing to their best. So they're the 3 areas of focus that you guys wanted based on this report. The report is on the homepage of the website, so you can either download a copy for free and read it in your own time, or you can see it as a slideshow on the homepage. Free and easy for you to go and check out all of the different things that teachers in MENA were saying last year. Okay, so on to today. So there isn't a host. I guess the host and the presenter is the same person because you got me for the whole time this week, this evening, I should say. So I'm going to be talking to you today about differentiating our content and getting students engaged, making sure the classroom is nice and inclusive. And following me, as you can see, if you're joining us on Zoom, you will see my colleague, Rowan. Rowan, good evening.
Good evening, Nathan.
How are you?
How are you? I'm good. How's everybody?
I'm good as well.
It's really nice to join you today.
Good. So Romana's joining us from Cairo. She is at the Macmillan Education Office, if I recognize that bookshelf. And she's going to be looking at a few activities from our primary course, Global Stage. So she's going to be looking at how we can use those activities to create differentiation in our classrooms in a practical way. And she's going to be looking at Global Stage. This is our high-level primary course. And these are some of the factors which I think make it a nice course. So Global Stage is all about empowering students, making sure our students are empowered to go out into the world, become leaders, become confident communicators. There's a really strong language and literacy element to Global Stage. You'll notice that there's two different books, a language book and a literacy book, which work hand in hand. You'll see some examples of them this evening. It's all about producing language, getting students to become confident producers and engaging with different areas across the curriculum. Lots of strong development of critical thinking skills going on throughout the primary classroom. It's a really great course book. I love Global Stage. I love all the stories. They're fantastic. And the fact that it uses those stories to get students thinking about the language within their own contexts and within the wider world. And there's obviously the Navio platform, which Rowan will also show us later, using gamified learning and digital tools to get students really engaged with the language in a fun way. So you're going to learn a little bit more about that in a little while. Okay, big question everybody likes to ask. Will there be a certificate? Of course there will be. In the next few weeks, I will go through all of these 8 webinars. I will take all of your details from the registration forms and I will send out certificates to everybody that attended. So hang tight. There's going to be a lot to do because there's hundreds and hundreds of attendees, but I will get around to sending out certificates in the next few weeks. So be patient and they will turn up. I will also send in that email a virtual goodie bag, which will have some maybe posters or additional professional development activities and opportunities that might interest you for either primary learning or it could be something to do with Global Stage as well, like this poster, for example, getting them to think about the environment. Well, welcome. Yeah, it's a pleasure. So before I start, let's look at the rest of the week. We have a fantastic speaker tomorrow. Miriam, I've already had a sneak peek at her presentation and it's so engaging. So I definitely wouldn't miss tomorrow's, which is kind of related to today. Doodletown is for pre-primary and Global Stage is for primary. These two courses go together. So she's going to be looking at getting our students using the language, producing the language. She's got some really cool tips and tricks to get students having fun with the language and really producing it in a natural way, something that they find quite difficult. Miriam's really good at this. So definitely join us tomorrow because it's going to be a really good one. If you are a secondary teacher, or middle school teacher, high school teacher, whatever you want to call them, teaching teens or secondary, you might want to join us on Wednesday when we have, again, another fantastic speaker, which is Anna Hasper. Anna Hasper is always super, super engaging and always has loads and loads of cool stuff to share with us. She's going to be looking at Gateway to the World, and she's going to be looking at using global skills to get our students engaged with the language. And we're also going to be welcoming a couple of our staff as well. So Mohammed's coming tomorrow and May is going to be joining us on Wednesday. And then finally on Thursday, our final summer session is going to be around guiding learners to successful writing. Again, this is for teens and young adults. Really getting into the nitty-gritty of writing for that age group. Of course, if you're teaching pre-primary or primary, and you want to focus on writing, and you missed last week's, my colleague Ola did writing skills for young learners, and there was loads and loads of really good activities and tips in there. So you can watch the recording to that on the MENA PD Academy YouTube page, because I've already uploaded it. So go and check out that. If you want to register for any of these, you can go to menapdacademy.com and register from there. Or if you wait till the end of the webinar, I will bring up the QR code to the page on the website. So you can go and register from there. But I will be posting out the links to join as well. So don't worry, I'll make sure you get that registration form. Okay, so let's think about today. So let's think about differentiation, differentiating our content, making sure it's nice and inclusive. Never know where to put this chat box. What's in the way? So let's look at the premise of our webinar. And for me, the premise of this is that students in your class are all very different. They've all got their own needs. They've all got their own abilities. They've all got their own interests. Some might speak English at home, others might speak it only when they come to school, which is true for you. How much English are your students exposed to outside of your classroom? Do they learn other subjects in English, or do they just have 1 or 2 hours of English classes a week? Lots of students have lots of different exposure to English. But we've got all these different learners in the same classroom. So how do we manage this? Now, traditionally, of course, we wouldn't have cared. We would have just delivered the same content to all of our students in the same way and expected them all to produce language at the same rate. But of course, that's not very inclusive for our students, and we want them to reach their own potential. And we're not sure yet what that might be. So this all comes from a huge body of work. And I picked this as one particular quote, which is from Howard Gardner. Does anybody know what Howard Gardner is famous for? You might know. If you do know, you can use the chat box. Anyway, he says that the biggest mistake of past centuries in teaching has been to treat all children as if they were as if they were variants of the same individual, and thus to feel justified in teaching them all the same subjects in the same way. Think about, yeah, people do know him. He was quite famous for a book about multiple intelligences. But he says that all students are not the same. We cannot pretend that the classroom is like a factory, which is what education was built on, that model in the first place, a factory model. The Industrial Revolution, getting children into education, education for all. But it was designed around factory models. Of course, we've moved on a long way in the last 150 years, and now we want very student-centered learning happening in our schools. And I'm sure for you guys, there's a lot of student-centered learning going on in your contexts. So to start with, I want us to think about our students. I want us to put them front and center. So we've got some students here at the moment. They're kind of blank slates. So if we think about in the past, the approach to education was to fill them up. They were blank slates. If anybody's heard of the blank slate theory, and you know who that was, I know who it was, but do you? But the idea was that our students come in and we fill them up with knowledge. That's the purpose of education. Yes, the one saying yes. But now we have a different approach to education. So I want you to use the chat box. I'm going to test you a little bit here and think about all of the different influences that our students have, all of the different things that influence our students' ability to learn, to achieve their potential. What kinds of things could we put in these? We're going to fill this screen up with some nice images. What kinds of things? Life experience is good. The culture, their teachers. Yeah, a good one. Let's see if anybody's got any others. I'll give you 30 seconds to put some in. I'll check Facebook while I'm doing it. The internet is a huge influence. Good, yeah. Some people putting here. Technology is a big one. Personal abilities, the family, their community, their friends. Friends have a huge impact on us. Yeah. Good, so we've got lots of good things coming through. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I want to get into the differentiation part. But yes, of course, we're affected by our personality, who we are, how we feel differently at different times of the day, different times of the year, whether we're doing well, whether we're not doing well, whether we enjoyed something. What we've already done in the past, we bring our experiences to the classroom. What we're interested in. I'm interested in sports. I could be interested in reading. I could be interested in activities. I could be interested in doing quiet things. I could be an introvert. I could be an extrovert. We all have preferences in terms of how we like to learn. Sometimes we like to watch things. Sometimes we like to do things. And the last one I put on there, although I'm sure as we can see from the chat box, the list is endless, is readiness. Am I ready to be able to learn whatever it is I'm supposed to be engaging with? And we're going to be looking at readiness in a bit more detail a little bit later on. But this is the idea of, I can't expect in week 1 of year 1 a student to be able to write a story. They're not ready for that. We've got to scaffold them. We've got to build them up towards it. So readiness is a big one. Oops, went the wrong way. The next one I put on here is, family. So who do I live with? Where do I live? What do I live in? What kind of class do I live in? How supported am I? Do my family support my education, or am I just left to walk off to school by myself? Do they ask me questions about how my day went? All of these types of things have an effect on our ability to perform in class. And within that, obviously, is expectation levels as well. Some students have very high expectations of them. Other students have almost no expectations of them. And the last one I mentioned before is English spoken at home. Now, some people have other things on here as well, because they've put the influence of friends. So perhaps peers could be on here. All sorts of different things we could put in here. This is not an exhaustive list. And then I thought wider than that is the wider world itself. So yes, people put technology, friendship groups, what they're interested in. Our friends have a big influence over the direction of our life, whether we like to admit it or not. Cultural factors, where I live in the world itself, has a big impact on how I see the world, how I think about the world, the mindsets that we have. Do I come from somewhere with a fairly fixed mindset, or is it somewhere with a fairly growth mindset? And also another one I thought of was future opportunities. I didn't see this one in the chat box, but opportunities available in the country that I live in, job opportunities or opportunities for personal growth, affect, whether or not I want to engage in school. If I think that there's no job opportunities for me, then why would I bother at school? That's what students can think sometimes. Yeah, someone's put bullying here as well. So yeah, we could think wider on this in terms of, I guess that comes into the how you feel perhaps in the personality, but there's overlaps definitely between these. And I like the fact you bring that up, because I try to wrap all that up in one kind of term. And I guess it comes down to belonging. We want to create this sense of belonging in our schools, but also within our classroom as well. And this has a big impact. So when we think about the classroom as a place of belonging, we're moving away from that traditional, doesn't matter who the students are, there's content and I give it to them, they learn it, they prove it, they move on. Factory style, as we said, to this idea of more students are going to perform better if they feel this sense of belonging, if they feel valued, if they feel respected, if they feel like they belong to the classroom. But this, of course, is not an easy thing to create for us teachers. Also, it's interesting to know that our circumstances are not fixed in stone. We can change our mindset. We can change our circumstances. But to do that, we need 3 things, they say, in terms of meta learning. We need knowledge, which we've always focused on. We need skills. So we see a lot of integration of skills in the classroom nowadays, critical thinking, communication skills, lots of collaboration activities. But then also this development of our character as well. Who are we? What do we stand for? And this is around that inclusive environment as well. So am I able to look after myself? Do I know about social and emotional learning? Responsibility, how to interact with others, how to share, all of these types of values that we can develop in the language classroom as well. And they practice these and they have a positive influence on their development. If you want to know a little bit more about this knowledge, skills, and attitudes area of learning, you might want to check out our Advancing Futures program. If you go to macmillanenglish.com, you'll see on the homepage there, Advancing Futures, and you can find loads and loads of interesting materials. There's webinars, there's blogs, there's worksheets, There's lesson plans that you can find, all built around this idea of developing these skills and characters with our students. So go and check them out. Some really interesting stuff going on there. But I wanted to think actually, so when we think about 22nd century learners, with always thinking about 21st century skills, 21st century learners, what is 22nd century learning or 22nd century learners going to look like? Are they just going to replace this little white box in the middle with 22? Or will there be something different? I know a lot of people are talking about technology now. Does that still come in within this, or is that something different? How's the world going to change in terms of things like virtual reality, artificial intelligence? Someone's mentioning there. It's going to be different. So what is a 22nd century learner going to be like? So we can be thinking about that as well. We don't yet have the answer to that, probably, but it's something I think it's interesting to think about. And how education will perhaps change between now and the end of this century. What kinds of things are they going to be doing? How will schools look like? How will students interact? I think it's going to be a lot of changes. So let's look at differentiation. So we had those students on the first slide. They were outlines, black and whites, but we want to color our students in. We want it to be colorful. We want to take into account different, as we said, abilities, different interests, the things that they can do. So I came up with, well, I found this on the internet, a slightly more colorful, inclusive classroom. Not fully inclusive, because we've still got maybe some gender stereotyping going on here. There's a girl colored in pink. Could have been a boy colored in pink. Anyway. But what I want to know is, before we look at differentiation, how do you guys differentiate in your classrooms at the moment? What kinds of things do you do? I'll give you a couple of minutes for this, because you might need to write a little bit. But use the chat box and let me know, what kinds of things have you in this last academic year differentiated? Where have you actually consciously made an effort to differentiate? I'll give you a moment, and I'll drink some tea while we're doing that. And I'll check Facebook. Also, while you're writing that, for the guys who are watching on Facebook, I'm going to put a link in the chat box there so that you can also apply for a certificate, because I don't have your details. So, okay, good. I can see some people writing in the chat box. I might ask some follow-up questions to that in a moment, but let's go to Facebook. And I'm going to put comment. I'm going to put comment. I'm going to put comment. Okay, hopefully that worked. Got an echo of myself. If not, I'll do it at the end. But I tried to put a link in the chat on Facebook so people can get their certificate there as well. Okay, let's see what people have put. Loads of great stuff here. So people have got, let's see, through the tasks, different activities. Okay, so mixing groups by ability. Someone's using gamification, which is good. Supporting weaker students. Different types of activities and different games. Is that for different students, or are you just mixing up the classroom? Doing lots of activities. Choice boards, good, I like choice boards. Different levels of texts and question difficulty. Yeah, you're teaching academic writing to first year university students. Yes, not easy. Different levels of stories to read. Yeah, so graded readers. Okay, is a nice one. Interactions, different questions, videos. Sympathizing, nice, I like that. Games and activities. Online quizzes. Yeah, working with what they're interested in. varying questions and activities. Yep, creating activities that they're already interested in, which is good. Okay, Shireen, I've just got down to yours. For you on Zoom, you don't need the link for the certificate because I already have your details from when you completed the registration form. This is only for the guys on Facebook. If they're watching on Facebook, they can claim a certificate as well. Just use the link. It's just a name and email. And lost different activities. Okay, viability. Okay, good. Differentiating media, text, videos, audios, hands-on tasks. Nice. Okay, lots of good things on here. Students with learning difficulties. Okay, someone's put there. So giving them perhaps additional support. Good. Loads and loads of great ideas. I wanted to see where you guys were first. I guess that's using, what's that, a test, teach, test type of methodology, figuring out what you guys do already. And then we'll see whether or not we've got some of the same ideas in here or whether or not you can pick up some new ideas or tips. So let's move into differentiation. Let's look quickly. So let's think about what's the difference between a traditional and a differentiated class. In a traditional class, differences are acted on when they're problematic, although in differentiated classrooms, they're accounted for when planning. So it's about being proactive. It's not waiting for something to happen. It's thinking about that ahead of time by, again, focusing, making the students the center of your planning rather than the content. Assessment is at the end to see who got it. I mentioned that before. In a differentiated classroom, we're using our assessment to be responsive to our students' needs. Curriculum drives instruction in a traditional classroom, but in a differentiated classroom, the students shape the curriculum, and we use lots of different materials and ways of presenting those materials. People were giving some good examples in the chat box of that. And we think about the classroom setup. So in traditional classrooms, it's mostly in rows, facing forward. The class is often centered around the teacher delivering material and content. In a differentiated classroom, it's student-centered, it's flexible. We think about the interests and readiness. We give them different types of tasks to do, and they have options to personalize. And we've got these different types of growth or fixed mindsets. Of course, some people worry when it comes to differentiating their classroom. They think they've got to create individual lesson plans for every student, and it's not individualized instruction. It's not giving every student a different thing to do. It's finding different pathways to help students get to the learning objectives. Yeah, we've got our outcomes, we've got our objectives for, let's say, a unit, 2 weeks. How do we get our students there in different ways? We still want them to achieve the same thing, but they might need different ways of engaging with that. It's also not about watering the curriculum down for students. Sometimes we think that weaker students or students that are struggling need easier versions of the material. And that is not always the case. It's not about just watering it down and making it super simple for them. It's giving them support to raise them up. So thinking about starting at one level and then seeing if students can keep building upon that. And again, we can see some examples of that in a moment. That's super heavy, so let's push that out of the way. So get all these things on Zoom that get in the way. So what is it? It's a set of unique decisions that us as educators make to bring the learning within the grasp of all students. So it's us varying our approach, the things that we are in control of in the classroom to help different types of learners to engage. Now, there are three things, I would say three factors that we need to take into account when we're thinking about our students and their engagement with the content. Number one, I already mentioned, which is readiness. So are they ready to engage with this particular material at this particular level? What have they already done that's going to help them to be able to achieve? So not setting them really difficult tasks or setting them tasks for things that they haven't learned already. And we can fall into that trap sometimes. We'll say things like, write this or read this. And we haven't already actually taught them a lot of the content, what's in it. So we're asking them to do things that they're not ready for. We need to take into account the other one, their interests and preferences. So what they like to do or what they like and how they like to do that. And we all have different interests and we all have different preferences. And then once we've taken those factors into account, there are 4 different ways or 4 different areas that we can differentiate. We can differentiate the content. Now, I mentioned at the very beginning of the webinar that students have exposure, different exposure to English in their environment. Some may have people speaking English at home. They may see it in the community around them. Some may have no exposure whatsoever. Some may watch things on the internet. Just because there's not a lot of English in your physical environment doesn't mean that they don't have any access to English whatsoever. They might have older siblings that watch things on the internet and they maybe listen in, or they're watching in the background. They can be picking up English from anywhere really these days. But we need to think about different students being at different levels or having different exposure to English when they engage with content. Again, we don't want to teach our students things they already know. We don't have a lot of time in the classroom. We want to utilize our time for other things. But some students might know it and some students might not know it. Let's think about vocabulary, for example. We teach very familiar topics in the primary classroom, and they may already know some of these words. We don't need to pre-teach words they already know, but some students may not know it. So how do we make that decision? Do I do it for everybody or do I do it for some? So we can be thinking about how we pitch our content towards our learners. One way we can do this, I would recommend, is to think about it in terms of Bloom's taxonomy, for example. We think of Bloom's taxonomy in terms of critical thinking, but we can actually apply it here, I think. So, for example, if they have had no exposure to the particular language that we're introducing to them, we might just want them to be at the level of remember. We just want them to be able to remember the vocabulary. But if they have been exposed to that vocabulary in the past, and we check, okay, some of the students already know some of these words, we can get them to engage with that language in a different way, give them slightly more difficult questions to engage with, get them to think about it in context, think about it in terms of their own personal life. We're pitching that content at them in different ways. The other ones is process. We can think about how they engage with the language itself, and we're going to look at some examples of this. The product is a really good one. So for those of you who have joined me for webinars over the last year, know we've done lots of things on project-based learning, giving students lots of different ways to express how they've learned and what they've learned, and express themselves as well using the language. And the last one is the learning environment. So we mentioned before about traditional classrooms, lots of tables and chairs, sitting by yourself, facing forward, teacher at the front, learning from the board. Is that the optimum way for them to learn particular pieces of content or engage with certain units? Would it be better to mix them up? Can they move? Are there quiet areas? All these things. We'll look at some of them as well. So we're going to be looking at these 4 different areas that we can differentiate. Now, I didn't want this webinar to just be me describing each one of these in turn. I don't think you guys need that. I wanted to look at this more practically. So I want to look at different types of activities and how we can engage them in these 4 areas. So as I mentioned, it's getting students to the learning objectives in a way that's most suitable for them. So let's think about some of the content. I'm using also examples from Global Stage because it is one of my favorites. So for example, this is the scope and sequence. This is what I want my students to learn from. So I'm teaching year 2, and this is the first unit. So I haven't had them before. I'm taking them from year 1. So they've got some background knowledge. They've done year 1. They've got some familiar language already, something to build upon. But I haven't done anything with them myself, so I cannot I cannot gauge exactly where they are. So I'm going to have to figure that out in the first few weeks, the first few months. Where are they? What are they interested in? What are they doing? So this is my scope and sequence. This is what I want to achieve with them through this unit. And of course, we're going to have language. So we've got some grammar there. We've got new vocabulary that they're going to be experiencing. They're going to be doing speaking activities. They're going to be doing writing activities. They're going to engage with a lot of reading because this is a high-level primary book. So they're going to engage with two different pieces of reading, fiction and non-fiction. And there's reasons to engage with both of those different types of texts. And there's lots of other things. Global citizenship is embedded in there, social and emotional learning. There's a lot to do within my 2 weeks as a teacher in my lesson plans. But I've got a lot to work with here. But my goal is to get them to the end of the unit. What's my end goal? It is basically to get them to produce, right? I want them to produce the language for this particular topic. So in the speaking, they're going to be describing technology. And in the writing, they're going to be conducting a survey. Yeah. So everything I do is getting them to that final goal. Now, there's lots of different ways I can get students to do that. If they're capable right at the beginning, I would just ask them on day one, make a survey and go off and deliver it. But I'm assuming, because they haven't done the unit yet, that they're not going to have everything that they need. They're certainly probably not going to have the adverbs of frequency. How often? How often do you use your phone? How often do you use your laptop? All of these things. If they're going to ask these questions in English, they're going to need some input from me. This is my scope and sequence. This is what I want them to be able to achieve. And again, we've got our productive skills here. I'm not going to spend much time on this because there are other webinars in these sessions looking at both speaking and writing. So you can go and watch those and get lots of ideas about how to get them to either write or to speak in class. But I was just trying to think about the end of the unit, what they're going to write or what they're going to say. So these are the examples. So let's look at the different types of skills. Let's think about listening. So in a traditional classroom, we would think about listening in this way. It certainly was when I started teaching. We'd have an audio file from the book. There are questions in the book, and there are answers to those questions. Now, the first thing teachers would normally say is, well, how can I possibly differentiate this activity? I cannot change the content. The audio file exists. How am I supposed to do that? And the process, well, they listen. What are they going to do? They listen and they answer the questions. They produce the answers to the questions. That's it. No differentiation whatsoever. But actually, I think now we're really lucky that we can differentiate listening activities. So for example, we can differentiate the content because we have different ways of getting them to engage. Lots of times now, the audio also has a video file that goes with it. Or perhaps there's an audio script. So when we're thinking about setting up the classroom, we could give them a choice, which one? So we've got different levels of difficulty because if you're just listening to the audio file, it's probably more difficult than if you're watching it as a video, the same audio. And the audio script allows us to be able to read, so it gives us more time. When we're doing listening, we've obviously got a short period of time to be able to pick out what it is that we're listening for. The audio script is support, right? So if some students need some extra support, they might want to use the script to be able to take more time and think about what the information is that they're looking for. So we could let them choose if we want different levels of difficulty, or we could build it up. So we could play the audio file first and then see which students are able to do it. And then we could follow that up by watching the video and then see which extra students can fill the gaps, and then give them the audio script for the last students to be able to do it. There's different ways that we can manipulate that content to give different students different ways of engaging with that content. Not just listen for 2 minutes and then answer the questions. And if you don't, okay, well, I'll let you listen to it again, and then you write the answers. As we mentioned, that methodology is Same thing for every student doing the same activity. So we want to differentiate it out. So we can differentiate the content. We can also differentiate the process. So for example, we could put students into pairs, and each pair gets 2 questions, and they have to choose one of the questions each. One of the questions is looking at listening for gist. So it could be, perhaps we could pair a stronger student with a weaker student. The weaker student is just looking for gist. So they just have to find a piece of vocabulary or the theme of the listening. And the other student is going to listen for detail. Then they can switch it around and then have another go, and then they can compare their answer. So we're bringing in those skills, we're bringing in that collaboration. They need to work together to be able to, listening for gist or listening for the main idea is another good one. So we can give different students different things to focus on and then bring them together to discuss, share their answers, see if they've got the same thing. And again, then we've got this peer learning going on in the classroom. So we're differentiating the process there. We can also differentiate the product when it comes to listening. We quite often just take the listening tasks straight out of the book, but we can do lots of things, especially with primary, because they want to be hands-on, they want to be really active. So they can listen and say, or they could listen and draw. And I left the other one with a question mark, but you can think of lots of great things. They can listen and act. They can listen and write. They can listen and do lots of different types of things. Listen and paint. I don't know, come up with some really creative things. And different students could be in different groups, so they could be doing different things. And again, they can come together and share and see whether or not what they're hearing is exactly the same thing. Especially if they have to draw or say or paint or act. They can have fun with it, I think. Listening and acting is nice. Students like that. And I guess that's why we do in the younger years the chants and the songs with them, because they're listening and then they're getting to act it out and dance around. So it's not just listen for information, listen for detail. Students find that a bit boring. So get them engaging with that language in a fun way. Get them up off their chairs, singing and dancing, jumping around, acting out. They can act out in all sorts of things. They can use their body for shapes. They can lie on the floor. They can use props, lots of different ways of getting them to engage. But we're still getting them to listen to the language and respond to it. So this was listening. So after listening, so we're getting them to receive that language nice and rich, getting them to engage. This is why I was saying about Miriam's webinar tomorrow, because she's going to spend a full hour almost looking at exactly this, how to get students up off their chairs and really engaging with the language. She's going to look at a lot of activities around this, so it's going to be great. So definitely join that. But let's move on. So now we've got listening. So let's move on to speaking. Again, there's other webinars on this, but I wanted to think about how we can differentiate speaking. So again, quite often in the classroom, we'll give them a picture, for example. So we'll start the unit with a picture like this one. And we tend to do whole class activities. We have a picture, we put it up on the whiteboard, and we ask the students questions. We bring in critical thinking here. We say things like, what can you see? Or where are they? What are they doing? How many children can you see? How many pizzas can you see? We quite often personalize it. We'll say things like, do you guys like pizza? Or what is your favorite food? Or we might ask slightly more complex questions to challenge some of the students. Things like, what do you think she is saying to him? Yeah, are they happy? Are they excited? We can be using this as a way to recycle language and reinforce language that they've learned in the past, for sure. There's lots of familiar language: boy, girl, hats, t-shirts, clothing, food, music. There's lots of things that they've probably already engaged with in year one, I would have thought. But again, let's think about this not just in terms of what we're getting them to do. Yes, we can develop critical thinking. Yes, we can get them to be producing language, that vocabulary like we just mentioned, or answering questions. But let's think about this from the perspective of differentiation. One picture, all the class is engaging with that one picture, not differentiated content. Process, if it's a whole class activity, again, probably not differentiated. We're asking different students different questions, but we can't assume that just because we don't ask a student a question, they don't know the answer. or just because they don't have the language to be able to express themselves, that they don't know anything about that particular topic. They might know the answer in Arabic, but not be able to get it out in English. We can't judge them because of that. We need to give them different types of opportunities to show that they can get that language out. So let's think about differentiating this particular speaking activity. Global Stage, I think, is fantastic for this because it has 2 books. So you have 2 contrasting images of the same thing. So for those of you who are teaching Global Stage, one question that people quite often ask is, do I teach the language book first or do I teach the literacy book first? And I guess in some ways, for this particular part, we can teach both at the same time if we want. So we can use different images or content. So let's say, for example, we're going to split the class in half. Half of them are going to engage with the picture on the left, and the other half are going to engage with the picture on the right. So we're differentiating out that content. But we want to take that one step further, I think. We also want to think about the process. So in the previous example, we were doing the critical thinking, or we were doing the questions in a whole class manner. But actually, I think that we could put these, what can you see, what can you think, what do you wonder, we could put them onto colored card. And then they can choose which card, or we could help them to choose. So we know the level of difficulty depending on the color. So we know that the orange cards are perhaps slightly easier because it's what can you see? It's just using key vocabulary. I can see pizza. I can see a boy and a girl. Yeah, they're just using key vocabulary. What do you think? Obviously demands a slightly longer response. So we can ask certain students or encourage them to choose a green card. Or for stronger students, we can encourage them to use the blue card. Again, we could differentiate this in terms of, we could ask them to pick up an orange card first. And if they're able to do it, then they could go to a green card and try that one. And if they can do that, then they can go to a blue one, and then they could try that. So they're building up. So every student should be able to do the orange cards because we've already introduced the vocabulary. In year 1, they already know a lot of that stuff. They should be able to say something. But what we want is to encourage them to be able to move to the next card. If they get to the next card and they struggle, then we need to have classroom strategies to support that as well. We don't want to put students on the spot. We don't want to make them feel embarrassed, these types of things. So we can have I used to in a classroom have, you know, those little bells that you have at the reception in a hotel, those little ding bells. We have a I need help bell. And a student could go up at any time and ding the bell, and then other students have to help them. So they're calling basically out for other students to give them help. They're saying, not sure about this one, can you give me some help? And then we'll invite other students up, or choose a friend, these types of things. We can get them to either ask a friend to help, or we can invite, we can say to the other students, okay, would anybody like to help? And they can put their hands up, and we can say, okay, good. I'm going to choose someone from the thing. Nuha, okay, come up and you can help your friend. And you could whisper in your ear what you think the answer might be. And then you work together. And then they feel confident. They go back down. Yeah, nice and encouraging. And we try to move them through, but not putting them on the spot like we would do in a whole class. If we're just randomly asking questions, we're structuring it out a little bit. And it can help us to differentiate because we can focus on certain students. If you know a student is never going to get from the green to the blue, you don't make them go to the blue. You can just say, well done, we'll give them a round of applause, go back, sit down, and I can record, okay, in my mind, I know where they are up to in their language and how far I can push them. And then we want to think about differentiating the product as well. So we've got those 2 images. So I'm taking the class, I've split them in half. Half are engaging with the party, half are engaging with the technology. Again, I could differentiate that in terms of ability. So I think that the picture, if I go back, I think the picture on the left with the party is probably easier for students to engage with than the picture on the right. A little bit more, it seems a bit more challenging to them. Might not be, but it seems that way just looking at it. So I could give that one to slightly stronger students. And then I'm thinking about what they're going to do with those images. I want to give them different ways of expressing themselves. So for example, the picture on the left, what can we do? Rather than just saying, what do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? And then moving on, I want them to do something. I'm going to give them an activity. So we're going to create it's like I said, it's the first unit of the book. So we're going to have a welcome to school party, or we're going to welcome the other group. We're going to make a party for the other group. And then I'm going to split that half into 3 groups again. So we've got half of the class now split into 3 groups, and they're going to do different things. And again, bring in this sensory learning in as well. So group 1 is going to make party costumes, and then they can use the language for that. They've got colors, they've got shapes, they've got items of clothing all going on there. The second group, I'm going to put some Play-Doh on their desk, and they can make all of the food. So they've already got pizza as a good stimulant. So what other types of food do you guys know? Is it good for a party? You could have ice cream and sandwiches and all these types of things. They could make things from their own culture if that's what they like to have at parties. And the third group are going to make a playlist of songs. So they're going to think about what music we're going to play at our party. And I want to introduce the idea of the survey, because remember the outcome for the unit was to do a survey. Now the survey's on technology, but I want to get them familiar, this group, with the idea of conducting surveys. So they can just create a simple survey, and they're going to go around the classroom asking what types of songs that the students want to listen to in their party. And then they can choose maybe 3 of their favorites, see which ones are most popular, put little ticks next to them or whatever. So they can go around and find that out. Then those 3 groups are going to come together, that half of the class, and they're going to put all their things together, and they're going to present that to the other half of the group. So there is this element of, it's almost a bit like a little project going on within the class. They've got lots of stuff going on. They can produce that. And we've taken all this just from that one image, given them a nice, fun activity. And we could even have that little party as a treat at the end of the week if we wanted to. The other group, they've been looking at a slightly more difficult image. So we're going to give them different types. Someone maybe want to practice some other things. They could use the internet to print pictures of technology, and they're going to make a collage. They could make a game that they're going to play with the first group. Lots and lots of ideas, I think, if we just sit and have a little look at those pictures and come up with some ideas. But the idea around this is that we can really differentiate out both the content, the process, and the product. So we've got all 3 of these things being differentiated in different ways, all helping those students to do different things, engage with different parts of the language, but bringing them all together to collaborate, create that little project that someone's mentioned in the chat box there, and then move on. So use that as the base, because this is just setting up our unit, right? We're just seeing what they already know, what they can already do, having a little bit of fun, getting to know them a little bit, creating that sense of belonging. I found out what songs they like. I found out what they like to do in parties. I found out what technology they use outside of the classroom. I've discovered a lot about my students through these types of activities, more than I would by just having that. Here's a picture. I'm going to ask some questions, and they're probably just going to tell me what I want to hear. What can you see? I can see pizza. Do you like pizza? Yeah, I love pizza. Who doesn't? Yeah, I've taken that idea and I've drawn it out, really. So this is speaking. I wanted to do reading and writing as well, all 4 skills. Reading, I think there's obviously lots of scope for us to be able to differentiate. I've got this, again, an example from Global Stage. If we're thinking about differentiating here, people might be able to instantly think of a way that we can differentiate this, which is quite an easy one. This is set up. I think not all reading is set up as easy to differentiate as this, but this one for sure is definitely an easy one, because we could, again, split the class into 5 groups, and we could give them each one of these pieces of reading. If we do this from the book, this looks like a lot of reading for our students. Which one do I read first? Do I read the penguin or do I read the whale? What's the teacher going to be asking me? So what do I need to focus on? Because that's what your students' minds are thinking. They're thinking, what am I going to get asked? What am I going to get tested on? And which bits of information am I going to need to remember to be able to complete that task? And we want to mix that up. Yeah. So we want to give them as much opportunity to engage with shorter pieces of language and really kind of get to grips with that language and then share that amongst themselves so they can co-learn. So group one will just get some questions about perhaps the penguin. Maybe they can, we can again make it fun. If we want to think about product, we could get them to draw the animal in different ways. So instead of having short legs, we could draw the penguin with longer legs and a skinny body. Yeah, all these different types of things. We can mess it up and they can make fun pictures, play around with the language. They're still using it. But a good way to differentiate is to give them smaller chunks of the language for them to be able to engage with that. And again, put them into groups and get them to do things together. So we can, these days, we can differentiate the content because we can break it up into more manageable pieces. Again, this can be done in different ways. If it's non-fiction, as you can see on the right, this is from level 6. So this is a year 6 class. We can get them to sequence things. We can give them just images and they have to research them and bring that information in English and again, share it perhaps in groups and then sequence out the different dates, because that's a really good skill that they can be learning, sequencing. We can differentiate the process because we've got the story in the book itself, but we've also got the story we can present on the whiteboard. We've got animated videos for those stories. So they can be engaging with that content in different ways. Again, we could let them listen to the story, but without being able to see it, to see if they can imagine and visualize. So for this particular story, I would just play them the audio. I would just turn the screen off, play them the audio, and then I would get them to choose one of the inventions and to draw it. It's because they haven't seen it yet, unless they've seen the book. Hopefully they haven't. But if they haven't, so they listen, they visualize, yeah, internally, they imagine, okay, what does an alarm clock pillow look like? Okay, I'm going to draw it out, and then I'm going to describe my alarm clock pillow. And we can differentiate the product as well. So again, students are going to have different levels or different abilities. So if they're perhaps struggling a little bit with the language, we might just want to get them to choose and draw their favorite one. So there are about 5 inventions, I think, in that particular story. So just choose one of the inventions. If you're really struggling, I can give you images of the 5. Pick the one you like and, draw your version of it or change something about it. If they're slightly stronger, if they're very imaginative, you might want to get them to create an invention. You could set that as a homework task. Okay, tonight, go home, look around your house, think about all the different types of inventions that you can find, and then come tomorrow with an example. Yeah, and you're going to share that with the class. Again, make it really personal to them. And they can come up with all sorts of cool and fun things to share. You might even find they invent something super creative that we can steal from them and patent ourselves. No, I don't recommend that at all. Give your students the credit. And the last one, no, it's not the last one, writing. So I thought of a few things around differentiating writing. First was that obviously, if you look at most of the course books now, Global Stage, for example, if you went back to the slide where I showed you the writing task, they're very well scaffolded these days. They really take students through the planning and their thinking, drafting it out, reviewing, coming up with a final version. Course books are really good at that. But that doesn't mean that they all have to engage with those individual pieces in the same way. So again, I could give them graphic organizers, but give different groups different graphic organizers. We tend to say, right, we're going to brainstorm. So we make one of those mind maps. But all the students tend to do the same kind of mind map, or they work in groups and do the same kind of mind map. Give them different ways to organize their thoughts. Think about how you can differentiate out their planning. We don't all have to plan in the same way. Some can be quite visual. Some might use digital tools. Some might use pen and paper. Some, I don't know, they might come up with all sorts of fun ways of organizing their thoughts. And of course, the easy one is to differentiate the product when it comes to writing. So you can let them choose. So this is an example called Think-Tac-Toe. which is basically like a storyboard, and you have 9 squares, and you get to choose basically which way you would like to. And you, as this teacher, you can rewrite the little blurbs in each one. But it's lots of different things, rewriting the ending, thinking about things from a different character's perspective, bringing a new character in, writing emails to one of the characters, what happened before the story, all these different types of things. There's loads of different ways. Acting it out is a really good one. There's things on here about creating things, building things, making things. They could use Lego or card, and they could create puppet shows. Puppets are a great way to be able to differentiate with students. They love using little puppets, finger puppets or a main puppet. All these types of things help students to explore the language and express themselves, I think. Realize that we're running out of time. The last one, we didn't talk that much about learning environments, but it's definitely one to think about. So think about your learning environment. Hopefully it is nice, engaging, colorful spaces, but do you have quiet spaces? Do you have noisy spaces? Do you have creative spaces? Is there an area where they can have free access to technology so they can self-access learning at their own pace? If they're going to go and do a bit of research, is there somewhere they can go? Or are they stuck at their desk? We've already discussed learning stations. In those activities, I was definitely splitting the class up. Flexible groupings, don't keep them in the same groups all the time. Move those around. Group according to what it is you're trying to achieve. Sometimes it's better for weaker and stronger students to be together. Sometimes it's better for them to be separate. So for example, if you're going to have a book club, you might want a small group of very strong students because you really want to challenge them. And because I think learning stations are really great. I mean, I used to use learning stations a lot, especially with the younger years, KGs into year 1, year 2. It's really great for them to be able to move, do one thing and then use that, move on to another thing. And think about how you use indoor and outdoor spaces. If you've watched Lucy Crichton's webinars, you know that she loves to get the students outside. They can draw with chalk on the floor. They can do lots of different things. Using sand, they can write things in sand rather than just writing things with a pencil. Lots of ways to get creative and get students really using their hands, they're using their minds. So this is my challenge. This is what I end the webinar with. It's going to be a challenge for the new academic year. So for every unit that you teach, I would like you to differentiate 5 different things within that unit. 1, differentiating an activity to take into account the different levels of your student, whether or not you're going to be pitching different types of content to different types of students. Think about their interests. What do they like to do? How do you get them doing what I just said? Writing not just with a pen and paper, but writing in sand or writing with paint. Get them to express themselves based on the interests that they have. How can they bring things from home to show in class? Again, they're all very familiar topics that we use. So they can bring photographs, they can bring small objects from home, these types of things to talk about. Definitely differentiate the productive task to allow different forms of expression. We didn't touch much on learning difficulties and special educational needs in this. I'd say differentiation kind of falls within that inclusive umbrella. So think about students who perhaps have learning difficulties and how we can adapt to make sure that they can access content. It can be simple things. It can be using colored card, for example, colored paper for students with dyslexia. That means that the letters don't jump around on the page as much, type of font that we use. Usually when it comes to learning difficulties, whatever helps that student also helps all of the other students anyway. So it's usually good to think about those things because it's beneficial for all, really. And I want you to think about differentiating your classroom environments throughout the unit so that they're doing something different in a different way. Maybe they go outside, maybe they get to go and interview another class if they're doing that survey, for example, at the end of the unit. Don't just keep it within the class. Go to another teacher and say, they're making a survey. Can I have a group of 5 students from your class that come out into the hallway, and for 5 minutes they come and they just ask them these questions? Yeah, these types of things. differentiate that classroom environment, get them moving around, get them engaging with different parts of the classroom, the back of the classroom, the front of the classroom, outside of the classroom, out in the hallway, in the canteen, wherever, in the staff room. I've taken students to the staff room to present things or show things. Again, very confidence boosting for students. So you've got 5 challenges on there, which I'd like you to think about as you move into planning for the next academic year. And I think that's the last slide. If anybody has any questions, I see some questions in the Q&A. This is the hard part about not hosting and presenting at the same time, is it's hard to keep up with the Q&A. Let's see. Yeah, I haven't sent out the certificates or bags yet. Don't worry about that. You will get them. Okay, is it? I'm not quite sure I understand the question. So you want to get them to talk about feelings, but the manager, we've got to be a bit careful, I guess, about the different stakeholders that are involved in a student's life. Because this could not be just the boss, it could just be about parents. So balancing that out, I think. Being sensitive, you want your students to engage. Talk to your boss about, I mean, it depends on what you're doing. If it's communicating feelings, I would say if it's visual, so if we're using things like those smiley faces, it's okay. We do want them to express themselves because we need them to talk about it. It is an important part of social and emotional learning. So, but I would definitely have probably a team talk. I would see if other teachers are also talking about students' feelings, see which areas are sensitive areas to stay away from collectively, and then get your boss on board with social and emotional learning because it's key to your student success, I think. Certificate will be given to attendees who attend, yes. If they don't attend, they don't get a certificate, of course, because I won't see their name in the attendance list, but they will still get a follow-up email so they can go and watch the recording. How can I get a recording? Yeah, the recordings are all available on the MENAPediaacademy.com YouTube. No, MENApedia Academy YouTube page. And again, I can put that in your email. I can direct you to the webinar recording as well. Good. Okay, yeah, again, this is, I think, yeah, Natia, you're talking about sensitive topics. As teachers, I would, yeah, stray away from them, keep them focused on, I mean, the book and the units are there to help you anyway. The content is there, but it's just how we shape them out, I think. Yeah, focus on what they're interested in, focus on their abilities, other characteristics, keep it super positive. Cool. Okay, I think we've got to end. I didn't see any more in the chat box. So I will welcome Rowan, if you're still there, in the background.
I'm right here.
People getting lots of ideas, I think, so which is good. That's the main purpose. These are supposed to be really practical webinars. They're not theoretical. We didn't want to do too much about what it is and all of the different quotes behind it. The idea was to give you lots of ideas for making it super practical in your classroom. Rowan, how are you doing? I know you're going to look at a few extra activities now, if you're still there. I know you're in the Cairo office. So that might not be great, but hopefully you're there. I think I'm finished. Yes, I am. That's me scrunching up and saying goodbye. I'm still going to be here in the background anyway. So Rowan is going to talk to us about 2 or 3 additional activities. So she's going to be looking at, similar to the way that I did, some classroom activities from the book and how we can differentiate them. Rowan, I'm going to stop sharing so you can, and I will wish you best of luck. I'm here in the background if you need anything at all. Just
thank you, Nathan. Okay, I'll start sharing now. Can you see it now properly?
Yep, we can see it and hear you loud.
Perfect. So hi, everyone. And Nathan, that was a great session. That was really fruitful. Thank you. So these are some activities from Global Stage regarding the differentiated learning. So the idea is the Enhanced Teachers Edition. It has like differentiated learning advice for every lesson. So you won't have to prepare all these activities. You'll have all of this ready-made in the teacher's edition. So the first activity is the reading activity. So it's the I, we, you activity. The I, we, you activity is I is the teacher models. She demonstrates or he demonstrates how to do the task and things aloud. We students do the task as a whole class, and you students do the task on their own independently. So how does this support the differentiated learning? So when the teacher reads the words, students only listen. So that's the beginning, the sequence of the lesson. And then the teacher reads the words. So students will read after the teacher. Then the teacher points out the words so students can read independently. So how does this support the different level of students? As Nathan mentioned, we have like students with different abilities. This is how it happens. So when the teacher reads, so students only listen. Stronger students will read after the teacher independently, but weaker students will read after the stronger students. So this will give them confidence to read the words after the stronger students. They won't have like they won't feel awkward or anything. They're just going to repeat the words. So that's an exposure for the stronger students, and also it supports the weaker students to have more exposure for a higher level. Okay, so we also have the story web. That's the graphic organizers. This supports the writing and the reading. So it supports the reading through, if they have a text, they can point out the vocabulary maybe or the idea of the story. So this helps the students that are more visual or like to organize their thoughts so they can understand better. And it also helps with the writing to get like an organized outcome. So here they're going to add the girls' belongings. So here are my rain glasses and umbrella pen. So they're going to add this on the story web, and they'll keep going and filling the story web to make sure they understand the lesson properly. Then we have the story map. The story map helps on understanding the idea of the story. So it makes the student know that there is a setting and a characters before starting the story. And then it helps them with the beginning and middle and end. So it shows them the structure of the story. Students can write in these areas, like they can write or draw, they can do it the way they like. And we have to support this. So if students like to learn more by writing, so this will help them by drawing. So this helps all the students to learn the best they want to. Then we have the writing idea. This is the differentiated stories. So I'll give you 3 handouts for the writing, and you have to guess, is it a standard ability or additional support or additional challenge? The standard ability for the standard student, the additional support is the student, the weaker student, and the additional challenge is for students that are capable of doing more than the standard worksheets. So I think you'll find the word written here, but it's okay. So that's the first worksheet for the differentiated writing. Okay, and this is the second one. And that's the last one. So in these sheets, you have noticed that each sheet, it has the level on the bottom right. So the first one is for standard students. So by this part of the book, the students should have learned to write. So this will be good for a standard student. But if we have a student that needs more support, we're going to support them with the number B sheet, letter B, sorry. So letter B sheet, it has the structure of the writing. So it will help them like first, next, then after that. So this will help them write properly. Letter C sheet is for the students that needs additional challenge, like they're good with this and they can do better. So we have to move forward with that. So we'll have them writing in steps. So this will help them organize their thoughts before writing. And this will help them keep writing and keep doing the exercise with an additional challenge. So this is another example for the differentiating writing sheet. It's write about it, sorry. So we have these two levels, the standard level and the support. So the standard level, also by this part of the book, they usually are capable of writing this text. But if we feel that the students need more support or more scaffolding, so this will help them just filling in the blanks. And then you can decide either you want this to be the level or you want to go further. So you can just make them write in the standard level. Okay, so where can you find all of these resources? You can find them in www.Macmillan Education Everywhere and on MAP, our application. So let me show you exactly. So we have the teachers' resources. You'll find everything attached, or you find everything on the teachers' app. For the students, we have the blended solution, or we have the students' books, like the language and literacy book. They have Naview, and Naview is like a gamified world for students that helps them. Some students like to learn better with applications and games, and some other students like to write in books. So this also supports differentiated learning because they have the chance to learn however they want. Like if they want to do the extra activities in their books, it's okay. If they want to do them in the application, so that's available too. Let me try to play this video so you can see how Navi works.
The Pupils app on Navio is designed to accompany the course and provide extra practice in class or at home. Pupils create their own avatar and then explore Navio's immersive worlds. They complete game-based activities designed to practice and review the language and content learned in class. The intuitive navigation and fun reward system encourages pupils to keep coming back to Navio, promoting independent learning and increasing exposure to language. As they progress, they earn rewards, points and badges which they can use to customize their avatar. And when the teacher rewards the pupil in class, the points appear in the pupil's own app the next time they log in, providing a stronger school-home connection. All students progress at different rates, and Navio takes account of this, and with good design, they always experience the right level of challenge, ensuring that each individual pupil reaches their full potential. To discover more about Navio and how you can make learning English more rewarding for your students, contact your local Macmillan representative or get in touch with us online.
So this is everything about using Macmillan resources or Macmillan, Global Stage resources to apply the differentiated learning approach. And of course, we have like way more activities at Global Stage supporting this. So you'll find all of this on the teacher's guide, step by step, guiding the teachers to use the differentiated learning. And also you'll find all the worksheets downloadable from our website. And if you face any difficulty or you need to ask any questions about the resources, please feel free to reach us. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
No, thank you. Oh, I was going to You've ended the slide. You want to go back a slide? So we've got something to look at.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Rather than the black screen, it's nice to see something. Thank you so much. It's really interesting to see some additional things. I feel a little bad because I stole a few of the activities from the book in my webinar, but it's really nice to see that, as you mentioned, Global Stage it's got so much content. It's about how we think about how we're using that content, but it's got some things within it that help teachers to instantly differentiate, like the writing activities, for example. And Navio is a great example of using gamified learning, getting them to go outside of the classroom and engage with that content in a really enjoyable way. And then they can come back and they've got the vocabulary, they've been practicing the grammar. Okay, now let's use that for projects. Let's use that to get them engaged in collaborative activities inside the classroom, I think. So really nice. And Global Stage is, as you say, one of our favorites. We love Global Stage. What a great book. Okay, sorry, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing because I've got that last slide where I'm just going to remind you.
I can.
No, just I forgot. I should have just shared mine, really.
Okay.
Yeah, engaging the senses. Get those senses all engaged. Students love it. They really benefit from it. You know, if they're really doing everything, they've got modeling clay and they've got colors and they've got paints and they're just doing things. They're not aware of the time. They're not aware. Same with the songs. They're singing. They're not thinking about what is it? What is the vocabulary that I'm learning this week? They're just having fun and singing the songs. So, okay, the last few slides for me was just that, again, there's a certificate of attendance. Be patient. They will come out in the next few weeks. When I'm finishing this week, I'll try and get some out this week. Then I'm on leave for a couple of weeks. If I don't manage to get them out, I will do it in July when I get back. But be patient. I will send them all out. And of course, there'll be that little goodie bag in there as well. And if at the beginning you missed the MENA PD Academy, that is the QR code, or you can go to menapdacademy.com and go and check out the website. All of the other webinars are on there. On the homepage, you'll see a link to the MENA Summer Sessions. You can just click into that and all of the registrations and the descriptions are there. And you can see the insights report that we wrote for MENA. That's also on the page. There's a few short courses on there, critical thinking's on there, inclusivity's on there. I think there's writing on there. There's a few things there. I'm going to upload some more things over the summer when it's a bit quieter and I can get maybe a new course up for you guys. But that's it from us today. Look, we've managed to finish 5 minutes ahead of time. We've scored 5 extra minutes today. Perfect. Hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you're all going to come back and join us tomorrow where we have Miriam looking at productive skills and engagement in the classroom, the young learner classroom. And Mohammed Aziz, our colleague from Saudi Arabia, is going to be joining us as well tomorrow to look at some of those ideas in our high-level pre-primary course, which is, of course, Doodletown 2nd edition, which is paired with this Global Stage. So come along tomorrow and we will have even more wonderful tips and ideas to share with you, I'm sure. For now, though, Luan, I'll let you say goodbye for yourself.
Goodbye, everyone. It was really nice having this session. Thank you.
A pleasure from me as well.